Revenge with Karen.
Who approved the invoice for $3,200 worth of artisanal office snacks. I barked across the hallway, holding the crumpled expense report like it was radioactive. No answer. Just the faint sound of Tyler's voice giggling with an intern near the espresso machine, something about how kombucha boosts testosterone. I stared at the line item again. Team Morale Refreshments signed, T. Dalton. God help me. Even added a smiley face emoji in the justification box. I've been with this company 12 years. I know which vendors still use fax, which clients will ghost unless you email them at 6:01 a.m. sharp, and which junior managers can't tie their own KPIs without choking on the jargon. I've cleaned up every crisis from misprinted packaging to warehouse delays in North Dakota during a blizzard. Been called mission critical so many times in performance reviews it sounds like a military rank. But lately, I've been promoted to janitor of Tyler's corporate mess. He'd been in the building 6 weeks. 6 weeks, and already the place smelled like Axe body spray, desperation, and nepotism. Officially, he was my new strategic partner. Unofficially, he was the VP's larval son, fresh out of some overpriced business school, armed with a crypto startup failure, and teeth so white they could file harassment complaints on their own. He knew nothing about ops, nothing about compliance, nothing about inventory flow, just swaggered in with his Patagonia vest and started calling the conference room the Idea Forge. This morning, I'd spent an hour correcting an email he sent to our biggest vendor, misspelling their name, including last year's pricing sheet, attaching what I'm pretty sure was a shirtless Jim selfie instead of the updated Q3 projections. I fixed it, again, like always, quietly, professionally, because that's what I do. I'm not the star of this show. I'm the damn stage crew. But as I watched him laugh, one foot propped on a chair like he was posing for Startup magazine, I felt something shift. Not anger, not even exhaustion, just that subtle click in your head when you realize a storm's coming and no one else is watching the clouds roll in. And hey, if you've made it this far, don't be like HR and pretend you didn't see what's happening. Tap that subscribe button and toss a like our way. 95% of you listen without subscribing, and trust me, it makes a world of difference to the crew behind the scenes. Plus, it helps keep stories like this rolling faster than Tyler's expense account sushi deliveries. Anyway, back to the wreckage. The first real red flag came wrapped in ribbon. Literally. Tyler waltzed into our Monday team meeting carrying a vision board made from butcher paper and glitter glue, which he proudly taped to the whiteboard and called Project Synergy. His plan, turn ops into vibes. His words. Not a single deliverable, not a timeline, not a spreadsheet in sight, just magazine cutouts of Elon Musk, a beach sunset, and a grilled cheese sandwich with goals scrawled over it in neon green Sharpie. The VP, his proud papa, clapped like his toddler just used a potty for the first time. I stared at the intern, Emily, sharp as a tack, new to the team, whose face flickered between horror and the desperate poker face of someone trying to save her own job. I didn't say anything. Not yet. That week, 3 shipments were delayed because Tyler decided to streamline communication by removing 2 key vendors from our alert system. One of them called me personally to ask if we'd gone bankrupt. I assured them we were just transitioning workflows, which is corporate for a privileged idiot, unplugged the fax machine to charge his vape. Then came the staff memo. Effective immediately, all operations questions should be routed to Tyler for strategic alignment, was CC'd to the entire company. My name wasn't mentioned. Not once. No context, no introduction. Just a picture of Tyler with his sleeves rolled up, smiling like he invented cross-functional synergy in his sleep. I printed it, stared at it for a long minute, and slid it into a new folder on my desktop. Title, Tyler Evidence. Because this wasn't my first rodeo, and I knew exactly how this story ends. The wrong people talk too loud and the right people keep receipts. Tyler may have called himself a visionary, but I've lived through 5 restructures, 3 audits, and a spontaneous fire drill during a board pitch. I knew how to wait. I knew how to document. I knew how to strike when the iron was melting. He thought I was just ops, just housekeeping, just some aging cog in his fast-moving machine. I was about to let him believe that for just a little longer. Tuesday's staff huddle started like every other, half-attentive faces, mugs that said world's okayest employee, and me, silently bracing for whatever brand of startup rot Tyler was about to serve. He'd made it his mission to open every meeting with a thought experiment. This one, what if we ran ops like Burning Man? No rules, just vibes. He said it unironically, smiling like he'd just delivered the Sermon on the Mount. I opened my mouth to counter, something about compliance regulations, federal guidelines, basic laws of physics, but he cut me off. Loud. Sandra, we all know you love your process spreadsheets, but let's not kill the mood, okay? The room laughed. Not because it was funny, because he was the VP's son, and laughing was cheaper than job hunting. Next meeting, he playfully corrected me on a metric I'd built, that I probably copy-pasted the wrong thing, then turned to the room and said, it's okay. At a certain age, Excel starts looking like Egyptian hieroglyphs. The intern, Emily, winced. So did the junior analyst beside her. But no one spoke. When I tried to clarify, he smirked and said, we love you, Sandra. You're like our office mom. Always here, always folding things, like my dignity. I wish I could say I didn't let it get to me. Even an iron kettle will scream when you boil it long enough. Thursday morning came the final straw. Company-wide Zoom. 50-plus attendees, including regional leads, client reps, and our sleepy-eyed IT director, who always joined from a beanbag chair. I was presenting Q2 inventory forecasts, slide 14 of a clean, color-coded deck I'd triple-checked. Right as I started speaking, Tyler mumbled, just loud enough for everyone to hear. Here comes NPR voice, soothing us all into a nap. The VP, who joined late with a mimosa in hand, camera off of course, laughed, full-out chuckle. Chat blew up with fake emojis and ha-has. Someone muted themselves mid-snort. I kept talking, but my voice felt like it was dragging a corpse. When I finished, Tyler clapped slowly. Thanks, Sandra. Always great when data sounds like bedtime stories. After the meeting, didn't slam my laptop shut. I didn't cry. I just stared at the camera for a full minute, heart thudding like I'd run a marathon, then calmly clicked leave meeting. 10 minutes later, I was in HR's office. Tina, head of HR, blinked at me like I was asking her to define quantum mechanics in crayon. We take this seriously, she said, hands clasped like a televangelist. But well, you know how gray area it gets with tone. He didn't explicitly insult you. He mocked my voice, I said. She nodded solemnly. That's tricky, you know, some teams just have a jokey dynamic. It's a generational thing. I'm not here for generational roast. I'm here for safe workplace. We'll log it, she said. And maybe next meeting, let's just all try to reset the tone, yeah. I left with a smile made of broken glass. Back at my desk, I didn't check email. I didn't open Slack. I opened a folder. Tyler evidence. Inside, screenshot of Tyler's folding things comment in chat. Audio clip of his NPR voice jab, recorded via Zoom backup. Email from procurement flagging his unsanctioned vendor outreach. One internal note forwarded from Emily. Tyler keeps asking if he can just backdate this. Is that okay? I didn't know where this was heading yet, but I knew I wouldn't be gaslit into thinking this was normal. I've worked too hard, cleaned up too many messes, saved too many accounts from slipping through the cracks to be turned into a damn punchline. Let him keep talking, because I'd just hit record. My state's one-party consent law became my new favorite bedtime story. Every time Tyler opened his mouth, I listened with a sharpened ear and a thumb hovering near the record button. I wasn't paranoid, I was precise. After 12 years of navigating every policy shift, merger panic, quarterly bloodletting this company had thrown at me, I'd learned how to survive. But survival was no longer enough. Not with him treating the office like his trust fund playground and me like a glorified Roomba. So I got to work. The folder grew fat. Screenshots of chat logs, Slack threads, Zoom transcripts. A voice memo where he whispered to a colleague, honestly, I think Sandra has resting secretary face. It's kinda her thing. That one got backed up twice, loud and external. A digital rosary of disrespect. Emily, quiet as a mouse but with eyes like a hawk, stopped by my desk one afternoon. She didn't say much, just dropped a sticky note folded in half. Inside was a printout of a memo. Please adjust previous timesheets to reflect full attendance for client strategy sessions. Backdate to reflect project timeline continuity. Thanks, TD. There was no project. The sessions didn't happen. Been in Miami that week, posting Instagram stories about leveling up with mojitos and metrics. I cross-referenced his calendar. Empty. The request was fraud, plain and simple, and he'd signed it with the same swagger he applied to everything else. I tucked it into the folder. Later that week, he called an all-hands, said it was to realign deliverables with synergy expectations, which roughly translates to I want to feel important, and everyone has to watch. I joined with my mic muted, camera off, smile glued in place like duct tape on drywall. He shared a PowerPoint he'd clearly copied from a LinkedIn influencer. It was all triangles and gradients, and the word vision misspelled once as visoin. I let him flounder until the end, then, politely, offered one correction on a timeline that was factually impossible. A shipment he listed had been delayed 3 weeks. I had the emails to prove it. He smiled at me on camera like I was an ant he'd just remembered not to step on. Thank you, Sandra. Always helpful when housekeeping speaks up. Silence. The intern looked away. One guy coughed, and me, I felt something crack. Not my confidence, not my pride, something older, like an old, rusted pipe finally snapping in half after years of slow pressure. Funny, I said calmly. I thought housekeeping cleaned up messes. Guess that is my job. That's when the glass door slammed open. The VP, sweaty, red-faced, and with his shirt only half tucked, stormed into the bullpen like a man chasing his last shred of authority. Everyone turned. He looked directly at me. You're nobody to talk to my son like that. And then, with the kind of righteous fury only a nepotist can muster, you're fired. Just like that, in front of everyone. No meeting, no paperwork, no HR. Tyler looked stunned. Not because he didn't expect it, because I didn't cry. I just stood there, blinking, not moving, not apologizing. My badge still clipped to my sweater, my notes from the meeting still open on the table. Security came. No words exchanged. Just an awkward silence as I packed up the essentials, framed photo of my dog, my backup charger, the stress ball shaped like a kidney someone gave me at last year's health fair. I walked out past the glass doors, past the receptionist who couldn't look me in the eye, past the little sign in the lobby that said integrity. Innovation. Inclusion. 3 eyes. None of them meant a damn thing. Out on the sidewalk, I paused. I could feel my chest rising too fast, my hands trembling not from fear, but from the flood of everything I didn't say. I didn't scream. I didn't break. I didn't beg. I walked. And when I got to my car, I opened the glove box, pulled out the USB backup I'd made last week, and dropped it into my purse. I wasn't done. I was just offstage, watching Act 2 line up like dominoes soaked in gasoline. By Friday morning, I was a ghost in the building, vanished from the Slack channels, wiped from the project dashboards, my calendar swallowed whole like I'd never existed. No official email, no announcement, just absence and silence. Except for the whispers, my phone buzzed nonstop that first day. Silent texts from coworkers who couldn't believe it, who were so sorry, who swore this isn't right, but followed it up with, "Please don't say I messaged you." One even deleted the thread mid-conversation. It was the digital equivalent of leaving flowers at a gravesite and running before anyone saw. Emily sent one message. Just one. I saved a copy of the retroactive memo. For whatever this turns into. He didn't need to say more. She knew. They all knew. But fear is louder than truth in a place like that. My laptop was corporate-issued, but I still had my USB, and a printed folder, and a timeline so clean a forensic auditor could frame it. That Monday, I found myself in a strip mall law office sandwiched between a vape shop and a dentist offering Botox. I met Allison, employment attorney, mid-40s, tough bob haircut, glasses that screamed I bill by the quarter hour. She didn't offer me sympathy. She offered coffee and a yellow legal pad. I liked her immediately. We spent 2 hours cross-referencing everything. Emails, Slack, expense reports, Zoom audio timestamps, the memo about Tyler's fraudulent time edits, the passive-aggressive HR reply that called my concerns opportunities for tone recalibration, the company handbook, which I'd printed last year after they sneakily tried to remove the bereavement clause during budget cuts. That's where we struck gold. Clause 17b. In cases of suspected retaliatory termination, any employee with documented contributions exceeding 6 years' tenure and a clean HR record shall be subject to independent review by legal and compliance prior to dismissal. It was a relic, acted on during a past harassment lawsuit involving a VP and his executive assistant. Most employees didn't even know it existed, but I did. Because I'd been here through the lawsuits, the cleanups, the settlements, I remembered. I kept receipts, and this clause could cut through the whole charade like a buzzsaw. Allison looked up from the document and tapped her pen twice. They walked you out without a compliance review? I nodded. She sat back, face neutral, but Her eyes were electric. Then they just exposed themselves. No legal review, no due process, no protection under internal policy. That's breach of contract. And you have a pattern of discrimination, documented negligence, and internal fraud to back it. My breath caught. It wasn't relief. It was clarity. Cold, surgical clarity. This isn't just wrongful termination, she said. This is systemic failure. We can build a case. I don't mean some settlement with hush money. I mean real consequences. Internal audits, policy reviews, names on reports. I didn't smile, I didn't cheer, but something in my spine straightened. We drafted a grievance letter to legal and ethics compliance, attached the documents, organized every digital artifact into categories: workplace hostility, procedural breach, retaliation evidence, client risk, and the thickest folder of all, Tyler Dalton. Whole package looked less like a legal complaint and more like a corporate autopsy. I asked Allison, what happens if they try to bury it? She didn't blink. Then we go public, and I guarantee your name carries more weight than his. That night, I couldn't sleep, not from nerves, from anticipation. I wasn't fighting for a job. I didn't want a desk back. I didn't want their holiday parties or birthday sheet cakes or fake laugh compliments in the hallway. Wanted something else. Accountability. I wanted Tyler's smirk to fade when legal pulled his name off the vendor list. I wanted the VP's chair to sit empty during the next board update. I wanted HR to sweat when they realized every gray area they buried was now being dug up with timestamps and signatures. I wasn't after blood. I was after documentation. Because in the end, the truth doesn't need to scream, just needs to be printed in 12-point font with a header titled Exhibit A. The formal grievance packet was submitted on a Wednesday morning. By lunch, it had already made its way to 4 inboxes in legal, 2 in ethics and compliance, and most deliciously, one directly to the company's external risk auditor, who had a standing contract to investigate code of conduct violations. Allison titled the email case 0041 Martinez. Sandra, urgent review. Nothing dramatic. No exclamation marks. Just cold, blunt fact, we have a problem, and her name is not going away quietly. The attached file had 37 exhibits, each bookmarked and timestamped. The crown jewels, a Zoom audio clip where Tyler mocked a client with a visible speech impairment, doing a cruel imitation after the call while someone laughed faintly in the background. Did you hear the way he said deliverables? Sounded like his tongue was drunk. That one wasn't just gross. It was dangerous, ADA territory. Client relations, nightmare waiting to implode. 3 expense reports totaling over $12,000 in the last quarter, each one tied to luxury meals. Rideshare receipts tagged client pitch that coincided with Instagram stories of him at rooftop bars, and a single $730 brand strategy dinner at a steakhouse. For one, receipt showed a bottle of wine older than Tyler's resume. An email chain between the VP and the head of HR, with the VP writing, "Let's remove that warning from his record. It was a misunderstanding. We can't have this stunt his trajectory, like Tyler was a SpaceX rocket and not a spoiled liability dressed in business casual." Legal didn't respond at first. For 2 days, the silence was thick enough to chew. Then Friday morning, 8:12 a.m., the first sign of movement. A calendar block titled Compliance Sync Urgent. Invitees included the VP, the HR head, and someone from external audit. No one knew what it was about, at least not officially. But word leaks fast in buildings full of passive-aggressive emails and shared Google Docs. Emily texted me, "VP hasn't come out of his office since 9. By 11:04, another internal meeting appeared. Title, Review, Dalton Conduct. This one included legal, just legal. Tyler's calendar went mysteriously blank. His lunch order, usually delivered at precisely 12:15 from the trendy fusion place down the block, never arrived. Someone on the dev team said they saw him in the parking garage, pacing near his Audi with his tie half undone. By 2:00 p.m., a company-wide update hit inboxes, effective immediately. Tyler Dalton is on administrative leave pending investigation. This action is not a presumption of guilt, but rather a standard protocol to ensure impartial review. Standard protocol, my ass. If this were standard, I'd still have my badge. I sat on the couch in Allison's office as she read the memo aloud, lips twitching with a suppressed smile. "They're rattled," she said. "That's good. That means they know what's in the file." The next morning, I received a message, not through my work email. Of course, that was long dead. but from an unlisted number I recognized as belonging to an old friend in finance. Just 3 words, they called him. The VP, dragged into a disciplinary review by legal. On a Saturday. I pictured him in the big glass conference room, sweating through his collar while a panel of attorneys slid Exhibit B across the table. I wondered if he defended Tyler, or threw him under the bus. Either way, I wasn't there, and that, oddly, satisfying. I didn't need to shout or demand my seat back. I didn't need to storm the castle. I just needed the system they weaponized against me to finally turn inward. I closed my laptop and stared out the window. The city moved on without me, people on scooters, moms with strollers, someone in a bright orange vest sweeping up leaves no one would thank them for. That used to be me, doing the unseen work, holding the place together while boys like Tyler broke things for fun and called it innovation. Not anymore. Now the folder with my name on it was sitting in the middle of the legal department's war table, and Tyler's Instagram had gone dark. Somewhere inside the walls I'd spent over a decade navigating, everything was shifting. And they didn't even realize yet I wasn't coming back. They moved fast, I'll give them that. By Monday morning, Andra Martinez no longer existed inside the company firewall. My name vanished from the org chart. Internal documentation listed my departure as voluntary. My badge ID returned inactive credential when a former colleague tried to pull up my old task logs. Every email thread where I'd flagged Tyler's behavior had either been archived, reassigned, or stripped of attachments. Digital scrubbing, subtle and surgical. Problem was, I already had hard copies, screenshots, and a lawyer who'd seen this rodeo before knew the scent of panic when a company started shredding digital fingerprints like it was tax season in hell. HR moved into damage control mode, reaching out to anyone I'd ever worked with. Just checking in, they'd say. Wanted to touch base about how you're feeling post-transition. One person I trusted, James, from logistics, told me they'd asked if I ever seemed emotional or resistant to new leadership. The phrase generational mismatch was floated. Generational mismatch. That's what they called it when a woman over 40 dared to challenge a boy king in techwear and nepotism. Meanwhile, Tyler was trying to recast himself as the victim. He posted a black and white Instagram story, a lone desk lamp, captioned, "Sometimes the brightest lights get burned first." I nearly choked on my coffee. Later that day, he sent a memo to select staff titled Rebuilding Trust, in which he claimed the recent suspension was part of a learning process triggered by misinterpretations and hostility from certain legacy personnel. He never said my name. He didn't have to. She hated me because I'm younger, he reportedly told a colleague in the cafe line. She never gave me a chance. Never gave him a chance. I gave him 3 months of cleanup, 3 project redos, 2 weekends of quietly fixing his misrouted vendor contracts just so the department wouldn't catch fire. But sure, let's call that hate. Then came the crack. An email, unsigned, no subject line, landed in Allison's inbox. Just a forwarded thread sent from a personal account with no name attached. Inside, 6 emails, dated months back. From the VP, let's push the review through regardless of the metrics. He'll get there with coaching. We removed the flagged behavior from his onboarding file. It was an overreaction. He's rough around the edges, but that's just how talent looks early on. We can't coddle ops people forever. And one final nail, Sandra's becoming an issue. Might be time to reassess her fit. Allison stared at it like it had teeth. "You know who sent this?" she asked. I nodded. "I have a pretty good idea." It was someone high enough to have seen it all, and silent until now. Someone who'd always kept their hands clean, stayed neutral, leaned out of every room where Tyler flailed and I absorbed the blows. But apparently, they'd watched the wrong person get walked out, and something in them snapped. People get brave when they think the ship is taking on water. And the ship was definitely listing. Legal, now fully awake and gripping the sides of their desk, scheduled an emergency alignment meeting, CEO's return day. No calendar code names, no vague invite titles, just case 0041 urgent ethics review. I imagined the CEO landing at JFK, sipping his last sip of vacation scotch in the back of a black car while his phone pinged nonstop. Welcome back to paradise. Tyler, meanwhile, went dark. No Slack activity, no socials. Word around the building was he'd been told to stay off company property. One junior manager swore she saw him drive past the office twice in one day, just circling. I felt the sting still, sure. Every time I remembered how easily they discarded me. Every time someone texted me, "Are you okay?" but still went to work the next morning and smiled at the VP's secretary like nothing happened. The betrayal doesn't go away just because your case file goes active. But now, I held the weapon. The next meeting would happen without me in the room, because the truth didn't need me to deliver it anymore. It was walking in on its own, badged, bound, with a cover page that bore my name. The CEO returned at 8:07 a.m. on a gray Wednesday, dragging a rolling carry-on, sunburnt and jet-lagged, still smelling like salt water and expensive sunscreen. He was the kind of man who rarely looked tired. That morning, he looked ancient. His assistant, Linda, sharp as a scalpel and unshakable since 2006, met him in the executive lobby, holding a folder thick enough to require both hands. "Legal's waiting outside," she said. "You'll want to read this first." He raised an eyebrow. "Can it wait until after?" "It can't," she said. He took the folder. The label read, Case 0041, Martinez, Sandra Unlawful Termination and Ethics Violations. He opened it right there, standing under a print of the company's mission statement in oversized Helvetica. Page 1. A summary timeline of events, complete with hyperlinks, recordings, and internal communications. Page 2. A signed expense report from Tyler, listing a client dinner at a rooftop sushi bar during a week he'd posted beach selfies from Puerto Rico. Page 3. Audio transcript of Tyler mocking the disabled client, followed by a Slack log of the VP referring to Sandra as overripe ops. By the time he hit page 4, the blood had drained from his face like someone flipped a switch. He muttered something under his breath. Linda didn't flinch. He closed the folder. "Cancel my morning, all of it, everything except legal." At 8:24 a.m., the CEO walked into conference room B, where 3 members of legal, 2 from ethics, and the external auditor were already seated. Placed the file on the table. How bad? Legal's lead, a woman named Nisha who usually measured her words like teaspoons of arsenic, didn't bother sugarcoating it. "We're looking at a full procedural breach, possible Title Roman 7 exposure, and a historic failure in HR process oversight. She has everything: recordings, written directives, third-party corroboration. It's not just wrongful termination, it's systemic risk." "And Tyler?" he asked. He already knew. His name and signature are all over the expense abuse, the client mockery, the fabricated metrics. He pushed time cards through finance with no backup, then tried to cover it with ghost meetings. And his father? Nisha slid over an email from the VP. "Remove all flags on Tyler's file. We can't let this stick." The CEO read it once, then again. He didn't look angry. He looked betrayed. He turned to Linda, who'd stepped in silently. "Tell HR to pause all severance discussions, pending review, and freeze any documentation updates to Sandra's personnel file." "Yes, sir, and notify the board. They'll want to see this before it leaks." Nisha closed her laptop. "If this hadn't come to us now, we'd be discussing settlement with a lawsuit already filed and Sandra's name trending on LinkedIn. She didn't threaten us. She gave us a chance to fix it." He sat there for a moment, staring at nothing. Then he said, softly, "She always did more than her job. We just never noticed." At 9:12 a.m., HR's head was pulled into a separate meeting. By 9:30, the VP's calendar was locked and his badge access restricted. Word spread as it always does. Whispered in the break room, texted under desks. The name Sandra Martinez re-entered the building, not as gossip, but as gravity. The woman they'd dismissed. The one who never raised her voice. The one who, it turns out, been watching the whole time. From my couch at home, coffee in hand, I read the forwarded summary with a calm so deep it almost felt like stillness. Not joy, not vengeance. Just the weight of being believed, finally, wholly, without caveats or gray areas. The system that spat me out was now choking on the evidence it buried. And my name was printed on every page they had no choice but to read. By Thursday morning, the company's website still listed the VP on its executive leadership page. By noon, that section was gone. Not updated, removed. As if he'd never existed, just a ghost in a tailored suit, vanished between board meetings and HR memos. Official internal comms followed a few hours later. Effective immediately, VP of Operations has been relieved of duty pending internal investigation. Interim leadership will be assigned. There was no mention of Tyler, no statement, no farewell. Just a quiet line at the bottom of a staff memo. Additional personnel decisions are under review, but silence says more than spin ever could. Inside the office, morale didn't collapse, it straightened, like a hunched spine finally standing tall. Colleagues I hadn't heard from in weeks started reaching out again, cautiously, testing the air. I heard about what you did. I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. We knew you didn't deserve that. Didn't hold it against them. Fear makes people small, but the truth makes them brave again. Then came the big move. The board issued a formal directive, a third-party audit of all hiring practices, promotions, HR grievance procedures, and vendor affiliations from the last 5 years. Internal email subject line, Governance and Oversight Review, Phase I. It landed like a thunderclap. You don't order an audit unless you expect to find rot. From the inside, they'd already smelled it. My grievance had been a spark. Now they were realizing just how much dry kindling they'd been sitting on. Then came the leak. I didn't do it. Neither did my attorney. But someone, probably inside legal or a very ticked-off compliance intern, sent the full audit directive to a mid-tier business newsletter with a flair for corporate drama. Within hours, headline read, OpsMax Corp launches internal ethics probe amid termination scandal, sources say exec ousted. Nepotism allegations fly. Tyler's name trended in niche HR circles for about 8 hours. Then the memes started. I stayed quiet, watched, listened, until my LinkedIn inbox pinged. It was a longtime client, one of the few I used to handle directly, someone I'd saved during a shipping crisis 2 years back. Hi, Sandra. And following the story, I wanted to reach out and say we always respected you. If you're available, we'd like to explore working with you directly. No middlemen, just clean ops. That message made me pause more than the HR file, more than the legal win, more than the VP's fall, because that was earned. Not a byproduct of corporate guilt. Not a makeup call. Respect. Unfiltered. I drafted a reply that night. Thanked them. Said I appreciated the outreach, then politely declined a direct partnership. I wasn't looking to rebuild what I'd just burned down. But I did offer them something else, a consulting agreement. One-time ethics evaluation, on my terms. No middle layers, no titles. Just me, my experience, and the truth they pretended didn't matter until it did. A week later, the company asked if I'd consider returning in an advisory capacity. Not to the same job, not to operations, but to ethics. Wanted me to help fix the systems that allowed Tyler to rise, that let the VP rewrite rules in the dark, that let HR bury reports with neutral smiles and team culture doublespeak. I thought about it, and I said yes, but only if I reported directly to the board, only if my contract was airtight, only if I could bring my own team, and only if they understood I wasn't there to make friends, was there to ensure no one else got erased with a single sentence shouted in a hallway. This wasn't revenge, it was architecture. I wasn't coming back to pick up the pieces. I was coming back to make sure they never cracked again. The boardroom hadn't changed. Same fake mahogany table, same oversized TV screen that never worked quite right. Same chairs with that odd lumbar curve no one ever adjusted because no one ever stayed long enough to care. But I had changed. I walked in wearing gray, not corporate gray, but storm gray. The kind that doesn't ask for attention, it commands it. My bag was simple, my shoes quiet, my posture unshaken. Every step I took was deliberate, measured, and steady, like someone who wasn't returning to a job but answering a summons. The CEO stood when I entered. So did legal. The board members glanced up, then back at the packet in front of them. Each one bore the same bold header: Policy Reform Proposal, authored by S. Martinez, independent ethics consultant. No one offered coffee. No one needed to. The CEO nodded at me with something between gratitude and guilt. Sandra, thank you for coming. I returned the nod, not warm, not cold, just professional, of course. He gestured to the seat at the end of the table, not where I used to sit, not in the middle, not off to the side. The end, one they usually saved for external auditors, visiting attorneys, or now me. Legal cleared her throat. It was Nisha again, eyes sharp, spine straighter than ever. Your documentation saved us from a PR disaster, she said, full stop. I didn't blink. I didn't smile. I already knew that. What I wanted to know was, did they believe it? The CEO continued. Tyler and the VP are both under formal review. We've hired third-party investigators. Either of them is allowed on the premises or in contact with any active staff. We expect findings within 60 days. Until then, they're on unpaid administrative leave. Unpaid, not reassigned, not relocated, unpaid. Progress. One of the board members, a man with a Rolex the size of a small moon, asked, would you be willing to oversee the reform rollout personally? I'd expected that question. I answered it like I'd rehearsed it in my sleep. I'll lead the audit and the policy redesign, but I won't manage day-to-day operations. I'm here to advise, not babysit, they nodded. The CEO leaned forward, and the contract terms already reviewed, I said, flat rate, 6-month scope, full autonomy. I pick my own team, no oversight unless it violates federal law. Linda, the CEO's assistant, passed out copies. The contract was already signed. My initials marked every page, same 3 letters they once wiped from their systems, now stamped across their salvation. I didn't want revenge. I wanted frameworks. I wanted policies that outlasted me. Processes no VP could override with a golf course handshake or a 3 a.m. Slack DM, so I handed out one last folder. Title, Phase 1, Culture Repair and Oversight Protocols. Inside, an entirely new complaint escalation process, anonymous documentation channels, ethics checkpoints at every hiring milestone, and mandatory compliance training for all executives, including the board. The CEO flipped through it, stopped on a page marked Enforcement and Consequences, and read it twice. He didn't say anything, just nodded. A silence fell over the room, not awkward, not loaded, just respectful. I glanced at the seat I used to occupy during ops meetings, back when I took notes while Tyler made noise. It was empty now. No one had filled it. I didn't want it back. I had something better. I stood slowly, reached into my bag, and pulled out one more document. Placed it gently on the table in front of the CEO. Title in bold, all caps, Policy Reform Proposal, Final Draft. I looked around the room, these executives, these decision-makers, these people who once let me be walked out like a problem to be erased. And I said, calm as a storm that already passed, he called me nobody, but my name's on every page that just saved this company. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.